I saw this guitar early in the morning on Reverb, and the year it was made is a very transitional time period, so I decided to buy it to see if it had any hidden secrets. We're checking out an Explorer tonight. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. It's not just any Explorer, though. We've got a straight-up ebony one this time. So this is advertised as a 1982 Explorer. How can we verify that? Well, let's check out our serial number. The way you can tell is your first and fifth digit, so 8282. Perfect. This one tells us the day of production. Looks like, what, 286? And then the last three tell you the production number. So this is production number 26, which means it's the 27th guitar made that day because there is a 000, and these being $4.99 or less actually tells us it's a Kalamazoo produced guitar. So what Explorers existed in 1982? Well, the model came back in 1976. We documented a new old stock mint condition example of one of those here. It did its best to bring back the original Korina body 50s ones, now being made out of mahogany, and that 76 style persisted throughout the 70s and 80s. However, around 1979, they expand upon the Explorer lineup with something called the Explorer 2, or the E2. It's got those cool walnut maple sandwich bodies in both variations, with maple on top or walnut on top. You also have flying V variations on those. There's also an upgraded version of one of those called the E2 CMT with the curly maple top and straight up maple body. However, with the introduction of the Heritage series starting around late 81, you see the return of the Korina bodied ones. It's not until 1983 that the thrash metal style alder bodied versions that are a little bit more stripped down come out. And then you also get fun things like the Designer series with the Union Jack Explorer. So with all that information, which one is this? It's an 82. Here's the thing about black Explorers. Sometimes these are still Korina, and you gotta buy them to find out and look inside their cavities. Because if you happen to find that, the guitar is worth twice as much as the mahogany ones because, hey, Korina is cruise control for cool. But you want to look for things like the Gibson logo being in mother of pearl. Check to make sure it has the ABR1 bridge rather than a Nashville. Normally, this version will have the super humbuckers, whereas the Korina ones will have the Tim Shaw PAFs. But occasionally, depending on how far into the 80s you go, you can find both. Many of the Korina ones will actually have ink stamp serial numbers, so I don't think this one's Korina, but just on the off chance, I thought the price was good enough to take the risk on it. Because worst case scenario, I've got an awesome 76 style 82 Explorer before these start to slowly dwindle in supply as the thrash metal ones become more popular. But needless to say, this poor old gal needs a good cleaning and dusting. It needs that headstock fixed up. Crazy string guy. Let's go ahead and throw this one over onto the workbench and work my magic. Here we are after an hour and a half of cleaning. It's still not a mint condition guitar, but it looks so much better now. So, how can you identify if you have a Korina one if the whole body is covered over in an ebony finish? First thing we kind of already talked about. Check and see what kind of pickups you have. If they're epoxy coated like this, it's unlikely to be a Korina body. And this one has a matching set of super humbuckers. Now, if you want to know why they're epoxy coated, you gotta remember, this is the time when overseas manufacturers were copying Gibson guitars. They were probably scared that they're going to steal their pickup electronics, and maybe some of it just has to do with potting. But for whatever the reason, you can find these in this era. And unfortunately, if a coil goes bad or something, they're very, very, very difficult to repair, to the point where you might as well just replace it with something else. But within the circuit, the bridge reads 7.3 k ohms, our neck position 5.14, and the middle position, with both of them running together, is 3. Now you might say, hey, why is that one so low? That's just how it is. It's very similar to the SG standards. They're usually about 5 and 7-ish. But the next thing you should do is see if you can find the wood anywhere. If you have a more beat up example, you might see it on a ding. Like looking there, I'm fairly confident it's mahogany. Another thing to consider is if you look at the guitar in the light just right after you've cleaned it, you can sometimes actually see the wood grain show through. Problem with that, mahogany and Korina are similarly grained, but you can kind of see what I'm talking about right here. But this made it very easy. You can very clearly see the mahogany body on this one because of a bare area in our cavity. It almost looks like the cavity was too short and the factory had to slightly enlarge it, because you don't always find that. I've seen that in at least one other guitar before. You also have to keep in mind, sometimes humbuckers are slightly wider. Possible there was something else in here and somebody had to lightly enlarge the route. Here's inside our bridge pickup cavity. Everything is covered in black, and we have some foam spacers that were probably added after the fact, to be my guess. That helps it so the bridge pickup doesn't move if you like to rest your hand on it. But now our bridge and tailpiece. It is a true Gibson ABR1. I flipped the saddles around, that way we could rock this thing the intended direction of an ABR1. But you can see your Gibson branding right there. And for full disclosure, if you're interested in being the next owner of this one, the top of the post is a little bit marred, so this actually can't come off that direction. You'd have to remove this and replace it with another one, which is easy enough to do. It just screws right out because it's drilled directly into the top. And we have a full weight gold tailpiece. Now let's talk about the pickguard. I think the reason why I wanted to check this one to make sure it wasn't Korina was the fact that it had an ebony one. I now believe this was probably replaced at some point in time, because it actually is 3-ply. There's just no beveled edge to it, so you can hardly even tell it's a multi-ply pickguard. Possible I'm wrong on that, but that's easy enough to swap back into a white one if you can find somebody to custom make you a new one. But there's our toggle switch. And if you remove it, here's what you're left with. The CNC milling hole, I guess you could call it. And here's your route to lead all the wires in there. If we hadn't found bare mahogany already, here's another really good area to see wood grain. Because if you haven't found it by now, your last ditch effort, and probably should be the first place you check, on my experience, is underneath your truss rod cover. Just ask the seller for a photo of that. It should be pretty clear if you have mahogany or Korina at this point. That's definitely a mahogany neck, so this is a 76 style Explorer. It's also important to check what year your guitar is, like we did before, because if it's not an 80, 81, 82, 83, or maybe an 84, you don't even have a chance. Which you might think, oh, am I sad I bought it? No, these things are awesome. The way the Explorers rank are the reissue Korina ones, then the 76, and then the E2s, and then the thrash metal ones. However, I say that with an asterisk because asking prices have changed quite considerably over the years, but that's the general hierarchy of them. And just because the E2s rank below the 76, it's just because they're non-traditional. They're actually fantastic guitars if you like the idea of walnut and maple. This guitar ended up not quite being clean enough for my collection, but if anybody has an extraordinary E2, like really good condition or particularly nice wood grain, I would consider a swap. Because I'm tired of talking about those things. I want to document one. Now we can check out our knobs. It's the golden barrel style. Even though they started life golden in color, they still amber over, and that gives them such a cool look. It's one of those things that you don't realize how cool it is until you've seen it in person. Because here it is as compared to a new one. So when a knob breaks and people go, oh, just buy a new set rather than paying crazy money for vintage, this is what we're talking about here. The shape is slightly different. The hues started life a little bit different, but a modern one just doesn't look as good in my opinion. Although a set of these would look pretty sweet on this guitar. You tell me. Black bonnets or golden speed. And then because Explorers have really poorly placed strap buttons, we've got some Schaller strap locks on this now. The other one down here, and I got a cool strap to include with this one that has the counterparts. So it's by Ralph Marlin. And I just got a chuckle out of this one. It's an eye test. I feel like you could put a decal of that on your guitar if you're like an optometrist or something, and this could be your own signature guitar. It's got some decent padding to it as well. And if you're curious how many pieces the body is, even if it's a solid finish, it's just like that Les Paul Standard that was ebony that we looked at not too long ago. If you get it in the light just right, you can see where the seam lines are. After a certain period of time, just let natural lacquer sinkage happen. So there's one there, and if there's one on your Explorer, you know there's another one somewhere, because they want to do a two-piece Explorer unless it happened to be center seamed. So there's got to be one over here. I just don't see it. But this was definitely well used, not exactly abused now that we've cleaned it up, but you've got your nicks and dings over here, a couple of them along the top, a respectable player's edition. But now we can move on from that mahogany body to our mahogany neck with a rosewood fretboard. And I decided to give these frets the deluxe polish. There was a lot of finger cheese on this fretboard, but we got that cleaned up. And all the corrosion off of the frets. As far as immediate fret wear, I just saw maybe a little bit right here in kind of the cowboy cord area. Other than that, I think this should set up pretty well. And we've got our acrylic dot inlays. However, I noticed something strange about this one. Looks like they botched the installation. You see where it should have went in, right underneath it, but then they moved it. So now it's just slightly taller than the other three on the fretboard. Then we have a light impression over here. But I love Unbound Explorers because they take the paint all the way up the neck. So So it kind of looks like you have black binding, but you don't. But you can see the yellowed clear coat, which takes your white side markers and turns them yellow. Our nut width is 1.7 inches. That increases to 2.06 by the 12th. Our first fret neck depth is 0.82 inches. And then by the 12th, pretty significant, 1.02. There's a look at that neck profile at the first fret and the 12th fret. Just a nice rounded C. If you like 60s thinner necks, I think you could learn to like it in this area. But up here by the 12th, it definitely is pretty chunky. But now, for the face of the headstock. First off, our truss rod appears to have never even been used. So it has no leftward adjustment. However, if you need to tighten your neck, which is the direction you usually need to go, that's perfectly fine. It's got all the life. There we can see our yellowed over Gibson logo and our tuners. Everything was just so loose on this guitar. So I tightened all that up as well. Here's the truss rod cover itself. Nice and aged and appears to be uncracked. Now we can move on to the backside. Yes, it's all nice and shiny clean. But if you view it in a less flattering lighting situation, you've got scratches, including some deeper ones down here by where your strap would be, as well as some nicks and dings, light worming marks. It's got wear all over. And once again, you can see that seam line again over here. But I was able to find the other one. Remember how I told you can look for the wood grain? Watch for where it starts to change. I think your seam line is right here, because you can see how this is a very straight grain. But once you come over here, the grain starts to get like just a little bit bigger. So that's definitely a new piece. As far as our control cavity, looking at the solder work for the neck pickup, that looks like it could be replaced to me. Like it's been in and out and then they just restored the original pickups. As most of the other solder work looks good to me. But unfortunately, we can't read any of the pot codes, but they look like they're the CTS stylings that they were using. Take a second to appreciate the wear and tear along the edges. Everything cleaned up okay except for over here, so there might have been something that reacted to the finish a bit, because the rest is looking good. These are definitely the worst dings that you got on the guitar, where your arm rests on it. Now we can move up the backside of the neck. You've got some impressions and scratches, nothing too over the top, but no volutes on Explorers, and we're out of that era anyways, by late 82. But we've got our Gibson Schaller branded tuners with the Schaller style tips. And just like the body, get it in the light just right, you can see the wing that they glue onto the headstock to form the whole thing. That's not a crack or repair. But now blacklight time. This is a unique experience. I don't think I've actually seen this before. So the wood grain just comes through perfectly on this ebony one. And now we can actually see that seam line clear as day. And there's the other one. Very cool. Our knobs are glowing good. I don't see any obvious touch-ups on our front. Face of the headstock is equally looking as good. Back of the body also matches. It appears I was right with that line right there. Got a little bit of lacquer rub in this area / sweat absorption. All those nicks and dings we were talking about earlier. There is a little bit of finish wear. Maybe even a potential light touch-up to the side of the neck. Now moving up the neck, we do have some clear coat wear here, so it was definitely played. But thankfully, no breaks, cracks, or repairs. You can see our serial number a little bit easier now. So this one is peachy. All said and done, not a bad weight at all. 8 pounds, 8.5 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this one sounds. Bridge has got a good growl to it. The neck is round, but still very clear. And they play together like so. got such a great resonancy to it. That's the one thing I can't really show in a video, but when you strum it, it's got a nice vibration to it. It's all centered like right around here. So there we go, a 1982 Gibson Explorer. She looks a lot better after my process. Unfortunately, just not quite the condition for my collection, but it's a very nice resonant beast. Love that bridge pickup. It distorts and crunches beautifully. The neck, it's alright. But for me, it's all about the bridge pickup on this one. And thankfully, it plays great. You can set it up whatever action you like. It has minimal fret wear, as we saw on the workbench, but it's all nice and shined up for you. So if you're interested in being the next owner of this particular 1982 Gibson Explorer, the mahogany-bodied version, you can find it for sale on my website, troglysguitarshow.com. Otherwise, we'll catch you guys tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.